Awesome.
Finally.
So it does work.
It does work. We're here. And it's a joke that Jen said, if it's, well, I guess IT is harder than AI, right?
Yeah, exactly. You guys ready to go?
Ready to go.
Awesome. So hello, everybody. Welcome to today's talk. Today we have Rafał. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
Rafał and Fabio, who are going to talk about launching customer-facing chatbot for Scotiabank. So they're both very distinguished guests. Let me first tell you about Rafał. So Rafał is the Director of Data Science at Scotiabank on the Corporate Functions Analytics and AI ML Solutions team, supporting various AI and ML initiatives across the bank and its subsidiaries. He has been a part of Scotiabank for over 5 years and has worked on a variety of projects in digital, fraud, AML, and mobile banking. He has nearly 10 years of hands-on experience in data science and holds a master's from University of Toronto in economics. We also have Fabio, who's the senior AI ML product manager at Scotiabank. So Fabio works in the corporate functions analytics and AI ML solutions team, supporting the development of Scotiabank chatbot for the past 1.5 years. Prior to that, he spent 2 years scaling Juliet, WestJet's virtual assistant, helping hundreds of customers answering their questions and navigating them to FAQs. Fabio's experience also includes launching a cryptocurrency exchange in Brazil and a real estate startup in Boston. He holds a Master's of Advanced Management degree from Yale School of Management. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Abdur. So let me start off with thanking you for the introduction and thanking everyone for attending. So if you can't see the screen or you popped into the wrong workshop, we'll be talking about how to launch a customer-facing chatbot from just a POC or an idea to full-on customer implementation. And what makes this interesting is we're coming from a large organization perspective. So we're going to basically explain how we navigated the complexity of multiple business lines, stakeholders, and how we dealt with ambiguity. So in terms of our agenda today, we'll start off with a general introduction. You basically know who we are. We'll also introduce who Scotiabank is. We'll give you a quick intro in terms of what we mean when we say chatbot or virtual assistant, and then we'll also we'll also go over some terminology you'll hear sprinkled out throughout the presentation. Then we'll answer the age-old question, why even bother? Why use NLU or chatbots in the first place? Then we'll get into the meat of the presentation where we'll basically describe the metamorphosis of the chatbot, how we went from POC to a beta to customer launch. And now we're moving to phase 2 where we're implementing ML to automate certain aspects of the chatbot in order to diagnose it. But also we're going to explain how we're moving from an informational chatbot to one where it's transactional in nature. And then finally, we'll close off with 8 pillars that we found to be extremely important for the success of our chatbot. So who's Scotiabank? Well, we're definitely not a startup. We've been around for almost 200 years, and in 10 years, we'll be celebrating our bicentennial. Largest bank in Canada by retail deposits, and we're also known as the Bank of Americas and a very international bank. So we're top 5 in terms of Mexico, Chile, Colombia, and Peru, and there's plenty of other countries in LATAM where we're present. And of course, we do have a wholesale footprint in the US. So when we say chatbot, we're talking about the chatbot that's available on the mobile app. So over there, you have the screenshot. And if you happen to have a Scotiabank account and the mobile app, you can play around with the chatbot right now. We launched the chatbot in June of 2022. We offer languages both in English and French, and we are partnering with our LATAM subsidiaries to offer a Spanish chatbot as well. And what actually makes this pretty cool is we've effectively built another communications channel for our customers to interact with our advisors. And this is especially important in the past couple of years as people have become more remote, but they still need access to their everyday banking needs. So moving on to the next slide, we wanted to quickly go over some basic concepts. Like I said, you're going to occasionally hear us use these terms, so it's fairly important that we cover it. So in terms of chatbot terminology 101, a query, when we say query, it's referring to anything that's inputted into the chatbot by the customer. So it's anything that a user asks, we consider a query. So example of that could be, want to make a payment to my Scotia credit card? How? Intent, you can vaguely think about it as a topic, and it's what's triggered when a customer enters a query. So it's inferred from a customer's query. It reflects the user's aim to seek some information or perhaps perform an action. So here, the intent would be pay a bill payment, right? And utterances are basically at the heart of the chatbot. You'll see later on in the presentation that we were very deliberate and strict with our training or utterance database that we used to build the chatbot on, and it garnered us pretty good results. So here, an example of an utterance would be, how could I make a payment to my Scotiabank credit cards? And an entity is essentially a subset of an utterance or a query. It defines the information you want to extract from a user input. So in this case, it would be payment and credit card. And this is especially important to help customers traverse through conversational experiences faster and avoid redundancy where we're repeating, hey, wait, what do you want to pay off? So now that you graduated from Chatbot 101, why build a chatbot in the first place? So we thought it'd be appropriate to bring up a quote from an Ipsos study that was published last month. Fabio, can you jump to the next slide?
Sure. There you go.
So basically, they found that 50% of Americans have used an online or mobile virtual assistant offered by their financial institution. Well, the demand is definitely there, and I'm sure most of you have encountered some sort of chatbot throughout different industries. And what they also found was that 2/3 of Gen Zs and millennials actually have a preference for using a virtual assistant or chatbot, as they find it more efficient than kind of the traditional way of calling in, waiting, and speaking to a rep. And our own analysis actually found that chatbot users are statistically younger than their cohorts. So in terms of moving from general, why use a chatbot in the chatbot industry, why is Scotiabank using it? Well, the chatbot is the #1 requested digital feature, and we're happy to say we always listen to our customers, so we took that into account. It also helps alleviate pressure on the contact center. So I'm sure over the past 2-3 years, we've noticed an increase in wait times, and this was a perfect way to alleviate some of the pressures and allow our customers to quickly get the information they need. And lastly, we are an AI ML team, and we love to experiment in this space, obviously. And this is one of the first customer-facing AI ML products for the bank. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Fabio, who will kind of highlight the metamorphosis of the chatbot and basically how we've evolved.
Thank you, Rafał. So hi, everyone. Yes, I'm going to walk you through some of the important steps of our implementation. As you can see in the screen, basically we can divide the project so far into 2 phases. The first one being the path to customer launch and implementing to 100% of the customers. And the second phase being automation, and so automatizing some of the existing process that we have, bringing transactional experiences and overall scaling the chatbot. This is where we are right now. We have almost just ended phase 1, and we are starting phase 2. And I'm going to talk about what we did in phase 1 with you. Basically, we can break down phase one into 3 steps. The first one is the proof of concept, where we try to demonstrate what a chatbot could do from an AI and ML perspective. Then once we validated that, we started to build like the full MVP solution, let's put like in this way, to be tested with employees first. And after that, after learning from this experience with employees, we'll launch to customers. And that's the third step of phase one. And then we're going to talk about how our sustainment process actually supported to the launch strategy. We didn't launch to 100% of the customers at first. We started with 1%, 5%, 15%, and so on. So we're going to explain a little bit how that worked. So starting with the proof of concept, like I said, the goal of the proof of concept was basically to display AI and ML capabilities. So we are not so worried about being super polished in terms of content or having a nicely built UI at this point. It was basically to show to internal stakeholders how the bot would respond to some of the most important topics that we would get. And we started by looking at the existing data that we had, right? And we were fortunate to have Tangerine with us. Tangerine is a Scotiabank subsidiary, and they happen to have a bot. So we leveraged the chat logs and things that customers would ask in the chatbot to understand what kind of questions were coming from there. And we also use searches from our FAQ portion of the website, the Scotiabank website, that is called Help Center. And we looked at first to work to identify some of the relevant topics from these channels, from these databases. Always focused on what an authenticated customer would ask, right? Because you are in the mobile app, so you need to be logged in, and then there's some types of questions that you can't ask unless you're there. The other thing that we did was at this point working with intent naming standardization, so it would be easier for the team to understand what we were working on. And then we also defined strategies first to try to minimize the number of intents that we would need, and also the maximizing the chance of identifying the correct intent. And we also try to deal with ambiguity coming from banking terminology, and you're going to see in a second what I mean by that. So how do you minimize number of intents? I want you to look at the examples that I have here in the screen, and I'm basically talking about limits, right? For most of these requests, the chatbot wouldn't be able to provide a precise answer because the bank has lots of different products and lots of different business rules. And we aim to have the most precise answer possible always, because when you have a long copy that is covering a lot of different topics, and what would happen like is that would be really difficult for customers to understand and follow. And at the same time, if we try to train one intent per type of limits, that would be too much and probably would lead to chatbot confusion and probably to incorrect responses. And we try to avoid as much as we can replies like, oh, this is not what I mean. Can you please clarify that? These kind of things, because this always brings some confusion to the interaction between the customer and the chatbot. So to overcome these challenges, what basically we did is we identified these topics that could be ambiguous for the chatbot to comprehend. We trained them, adding keywords that would differentiate these topics, and we use entities to identify these keywords, so we could skip unnecessary questions and provide the more accurate response. So that's it. When you look, would you ask me, okay, how does this look like in practice, right? And this is our implementation for another example, which is the payment flow. So in this example, you can see that a customer wants to pay a Scotiabank credit card bill. And it's important to distinguish Scotiabank because some customers, they may pay their cards from other institutions. And then the process on how you do that is a little different. So you can see here that by asking the question a little bit differently, the bot is leveraging some of these keywords, some of this important information from the utterances, and then it provides a more straightforward answer if you provide more information, right? That's basically what we built as a proof of concept, and we shared with our stakeholders, and then we moved on. Another thing that we did, again, it was to try to identify utterance ambiguity when we were training and designing our conversational flows. So sometimes people can verbalize the same intention with different words, and sometimes these words are close to other intents that we have already met. So some utterances, they need to be trained to different intents, but the flows also need to be designed to provide the right answer, right? And avoid confusion. I'll show you, describe very quickly 2 examples. The first one also related to payments, right? I want to pay my Scotiabank credit card bill. It's the same thing as I want to transfer money to my credit card account. The action is exactly the same, but the utterances are trained, or these utterances are trained to different intents, right? Or I need to deposit my e-transfer. And how do I accept an e-transfer? It's exactly the same thing, also trained to different intents to increase accuracy. So that, once we validated that strategy and it made sense, we then moved on to the second step of the phase 1, which is building a beta version to employees. Here, the concern was not only with AI ML, but the whole experience. So we had the contact center team, the digital team, AI ML, IT, working very closely together to deliver the chatbot UI, an orchestration layer that communicated with the NLP platform that we use, with the Scotiabank APIs and live agent platforms, and also content management system. From an AI ML perspective, the things that were important for us at this stage was increase the number of intents to meet our coverage goals. So we basically leverage a contact center call study. We looked at the topics that were coming from this call study as well as volumes. So we could identify these additional intents that would provide a good and broad coverage, the type of questions that customers would ask. We set up a content management system to manage all the chatbot content and flow creation for a couple of reasons. The first one is synergy. So all the content from all digital channels, such as the mobile app or the websites, they are all managed by the same content management system that we have used. And that would provide some, again, it would be easy for content strategists to work. The second reason is the NLP platform is sometimes very difficult to work with. So by adding content and flows to the CMS, we gained a lot of operational efficiency, and it allowed us to move really fast. Third thing is we had to work very closely together with the contact center and digital teams to validate all the content that we had, that in the first stage was not so important, and also validated the logic and the business rules that we need to translate them, because we were offering English and French, and also get legal approvals and all sorts of approvals. We also had the same thing that we did with content, we did with utterances, right? So we had to translate our utterances from English to French, and then review one by one to ensure that the translation was good enough and they were good training phrases. And lastly, we had to build an analytics platform to track all of the KPIs that were important for us during the project, and that served us to identify insights for future phases. As we close this stage, one more thing that we did was trying to understand how useful our chatbot is compared to other chatbots that are in the market, right? So we collected 20 random queries and compared how useful these responses, the responses were, like the Scotiabank chatbot and these other chatbots from financial institutions. Every good response was got a 1 score. Partial responses got a 0.5 score, and these were the kind of results that we get. So even before launch, we saw that what we have done was very promising, and it kind of helped confirming that we were in a good position to launch. So with that and all the feedbacks that we received from employees, we understood that it was a good time to launch to customers, which we did. So as I said before, we applied a drip strategy to launch the chatbot to customers, right? And for that, we need to come up with a model that would provide guidance to whether we could safely make it available to more customers. So we started, like I said, with 1%, 5%, 15%, and so on. And what the model, the way it works, basically you can see there is a chatbot training cycle. There is a conversational design cycle that are very similar to what we have done in the previous stages. But we also have this query review cycle here, which is kind of the engine of this sustainment model. And why is that? Once you launch to customers, you need to confirm. Again, this is when they are really using. So far, like what we have done was testing with internal users, stakeholders, with employees, right? But it's really like when you put a chatbot in front of customers that you get the real feedback, and you can really work on improving it. So that was one of the reasons to validate that we really had good coverage and accuracy numbers. And as we went through this query review cycle and we reviewed utterances, we were calculating these KPIs, and we would, like, based on our goals, we would give the business the assurance that yes, we could provide, or we could make the chatbot available to more and more customers, right? This also allowed us to quickly identify gaps and issues that we couldn't see in the previous stages. And it was the main feeder of both this conversational design process and also the training cycle process, right? That the teams were already doing before. One more thing about this cycle here is that there was a lot of manual work at this initially, right? So the data scientists were manually reviewing thousands of utterances to be able to identify these opportunities and calculate these KPIs. Why did we decide for a manual review process in the beginning? First, it gave the data science a profound knowledge about how customers ask questions, what are the topics, and how to better train them. But it also gave us labeled data. So we now have a base of more than 10,000 labeled queries that we can use now to automate this process and build it like in a more safe way, so that we can continue to do that in the future, in a better way. All of these cycles, they repeat every 2 weeks. And so every 2 weeks we share coverage and accuracy numbers that supported the drip decisions, right, to scale the bot. And until we got to 100%, which is where we are right now. So I'm going to pass it back to Rafał so he can talk about phase 2.
Awesome. Thanks, Fabio. So Fabio mentioned one of the challenges we experienced was essentially when we're scaling up, we're getting more and more queries, right? And so it just wasn't feasible to have a team to review this. So luckily we went, hey, we built this giant database of cleaned utterances with labels. That's a perfect use case for ML. So we're leveraging a couple different algorithms that I'll go through here. The first one is ML binary classifiers. So there's this, right now 2 versions of this model. So the first version identifies the most likely queries that are going to be misclassified by the chatbot, and this allows us to zero in on the most problematic utterances. This also replaces the need for a human reviewer, so we can review more queries faster and with less effort. We also built similarity algorithms. These are important to determine if there's certain n-grams or words in the queries that aren't present in our training data, and so we can quickly augment those intents and improve our performance. But it also helps identify intents that have a very close degree of similarity in terms of training data. And this allows us to go back and increase that degree of separation for a better performing bot. Lastly, we use topic modeling for whenever the chatbot responds with, "Hey, sorry, I didn't quite get that. Can you repeat or rephrase?" Essentially, that's the fallback intent. So this allows us to identify new intents that we can increase our coverage and create new and also identify, especially during seasonal times, what we need to address. So closing off the talk, I'll just quickly go over the 8 pillars of success. So I just want to do a quick shout out to the team that worked on this project. So really deep roster from PhDs in neurolinguistics, electrical engineering, computer science, and a special shout out to my co-presenter, Fabio, who's not only on vacation, but also sick and made it. So thanks, Fabio. But also in terms of our stakeholders and partners. So content strategists worked hand in hand with us to make sure that the content displayed was acceptable, especially for people that experience impairments. Delivery leads made sure that we always stayed on track and all the partners were moving in symphony. And also the contact center agents. They made us understand what are the most common issues people encounter, and also how to best navigate through flows. We also aligned that, hey, chatbot is good for a lot of things, but not everything. And everyone involved understood that, and we had to focus on the right use cases and kind of 80-20 rule, focus on the most highly repeatable, easy to manage requests. And what I know we mentioned all the challenges in terms of a large organization, but there's some benefits like having an amazing team, like I mentioned, but also having large amounts of data that can help determine what customers will ask and directly using that as training data that cut down on kind of the training time. Next slide. And also, one of the things we determined is at the beginning, we need to build a foundation. So breadth over depth. And this essentially now allows us to look at different data, whether it be the chat logs or web analytics, to understand the most common frictions customers are experiencing and the most common intents, and then build rich conversational experience that are transactional within those intents. We also made sure that we defined our metrics right off the bat, and we have different levers that we pull on to try to improve that. And that involves a lot of experimentation. So throughout the POC, beta, drip, and sustainment process, we constantly experiment with the chatbot and also the ML surrounding it. A lot of times it doesn't work. Sometimes it does work. And it led to a lot of ways where we actually improve the performance of the bot. And lastly, we reuse everything to achieve scalability. So in terms of ML or even the CMS automation. So the CMS automation allows non-technical users to actually work on the chatbot from a non-technical perspective, which allows us to publish a new model essentially every 2 weeks. So with that, I just want to thank everyone for joining us again. We're more than happy to take any more questions. So we have one. Can you elaborate a bit on how the NLP model and the handcrafted components interact to get the final result? Okay. So if I understand the question correctly, it's the auxiliary models that are present there. Yeah. So basically, the slide before that Fabio presented, you can see that there's a lot of steps, right? And at the beginning, it was a manual process. Where data scientists had to really understand what was going wrong when the chatbot was not performing well. And from that, like I explained, we kind of have this giant database, right? So what do you do with a giant database containing clean, consistent data? Well, you use it to build models on. So like we said before, the data scientists were leveraging this data we're going through and manually going, hey, this is correct, this is incorrect, this should actually be this intent, etc. For optimization purposes. By doing that, we now created ML that recreates that behavior. So the ML now goes, hey, this is likely to be wrong. You should review this. Your KPIs can be now calculated on the fly quickly rather than having a lead time of someone manually labeling and saying, hey, we're at this % accuracy and coverage. And the similarity algorithms allow us to determine any intents that are commonly getting confused, right? So sometimes intents might be very similar to each other, and they might have similar words or training phrases that cause that confusion, right? So by running this similarity, we can see on average, hey, this intense training data and this intense training data are actually kind of similar to this specific query. That gives us an opportunity to go back and optimize that and try to increase that degree of separation. And also, we can anticipate how customers sometimes will type inquiries, especially on a mobile app. Sometimes customers use shorthand. So this essentially signals to us, hey, we need to introduce training data that contain these phrases that our customers are using. And lastly, topic modeling allows us to quickly discover new intents that we don't have. Okay. Well, okay, there's a lot coming in now, so I'll try to go in order. Okay, what is the testing strategy? What kind of tests exist? How many test cases? Well, so not only from that database do we have training data, we also have a holdout set or testing data where it's a QA process, because improving the chatbot or specifically one intent might have unintended consequences, right? The improved intent might actually start cannibalizing your other intents and your overall performance goes down. So I think, Fabio, do you want to take a stab of kind of the previous slide of all the QA we do before launch?
This one?
No, so just the previous one. You went too far.
Oh.
So the one slide before. Keep going. Keep going. Yeah.
This one?
So
yeah, okay.
Yeah. Throughout this process, before we launch, we basically build up a training set and a testing set. And like I said, the testing set is held out. So when we kind of pull on all these levers, we try to optimize, we run it against the holdout set or test set just to see, okay, are we actually improving it, or are we, quote unquote, kind of shooting ourselves in the foot by maybe over-indexing on a certain intent, or maybe, like I said, cannibalizing other intents. So improving a chatbot is a little bit like a moving target, right? You can improve certain intents at the cost of others. So we have a holdout set for that reason. Since this is a specific use case of a chatbot and context-specific responses queries, did you need to explicitly inform people that their conversations may be used to train a model? Good question. So we do have a terms and conditions, and this is, we don't take like a copy and paste data, we always augment it. So it's never, we're taking your words verbatim. We do add a little bit more variation to the data. One, obviously for ethics reasons, but two, we found that we get better results when we do that. Can you share what algorithms did you compare and finally choose for ML binary classifiers, similarity algorithms, and topic modeling? Sure. So we're constantly experimenting. So I'll say some of the algorithms we started off with, and maybe mention which way we're thinking about going to. So we found for the ML classifiers, tree-based models did the trick. Specifically, we did do kind of pre-processing where we took care of class imbalances. We created synthetic data as well. But basically, your random forests work well there. We are planning to use RNNs for some similarity algorithms, kind of your typical ones as a first step. So your fuzzy, Wuzzy, Levenstein, all that fun stuff. Topic modeling, we used a variety. So there's BERT topic and there's also LDA. And I think I answered that question. Hi, Rafał. Thank you for a great presentation and walking us through Scotia's chatbot. I had a question about the models too. Was your model able to successfully capture the negative intents, likely not accepted? I know n-grams would help, but were they sufficient, or did you use some Windows approach and heuristic rules approach? Sorry, and it's a long question, so give me a second to really take it in. Yeah, so I will say we use a variety of models. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. For the not accepted or kind of fallback, we use a variety of models because, you know, with clustering models, they vary. You know, even running the cluster with a different seed with the same data might lead to slightly different clusters. I'm sorry if that didn't answer it, but please feel free to reach out to us after the fact. What was the team size for developing this chatbot? Fabio, I think I've been talking too much. Do you want to take this one?
Oops. Sure. I think, like, overall, we had like full-time data scientists. I think we had, depending on the period of the project, but maybe full-time 2 or 3. There were more that participated in, you know, in specific moments. You had me as a like product manager, delivery manager, 1 business analyst. We had 2 model ops engineers also working with us. This is more like on the AI ML piece. And then, yes, you have like a team of product managers, designers, content strategists, developers. There's people from the contact center team that also was part of it. Everything was built in-house, except for the NLP platform that we leverage. And of course, there is a live agent platform that also is a vendor. But all the orchestration layer, the UI, everything was built in-house. So of course, you need a large team for that, right? That's it.
Awesome. I guess last chance. Any more questions? And one more time, thank you everyone for attending.
Yeah, we thank you all. You know, oops, I think I messed up with the sharing, so I'll stop sharing. But you know, if you have other questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to answer them. See you soon.
Bye, everyone.